Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing. Commissioner, it's good to see you. You don't look that much worse for the wear. Again, I think many of us on both sides of the aisle, regardless of where we may disagree or agree with specific policies, are really grateful for your willingness to take on this job. And I know the chairman's already mentioned this, but I want to commend the fact that we are working through that backlog, and we're going to have I think, an efficient, hopefully, tax-paying season. I want to drill down on two issues, one which I've raised with you already and one that I have not. The first is, and this was the call we had in late March, the employee retention tax credit. One of the things we put in place during COVID, again, a bipartisan piece of that legislation, which I think was well-intended to make sure that folks, that employers kept people on during COVID rather than having to put them on unemployment. As I shared with you, there are a number of businesses in Virginia, and I imagine this is probably the case in other states as well, where there's been a backlog, they can't get clarity, they're not getting these tax credits, which I think they deserve. And since these were businesses that did, from a policy standpoint, what I think we all thought was the right thing by keeping folks employed during that period, can you update us on the overall ERC backlog and where we stand?
I can, Senator. Thank you for the question. And what I'd like to do is just very quickly walk you through the situation as I'm finding it in my first weeks at the IRS, the actions that we're taking and the results that I expect or we should expect. So the situation is the employee retention credit is an extremely complicated filing to process. It's paper-based. It's often coming through as an amended return, and you have to align resources across multiple tax years. So the staff at the IRS has a lot of work to do when these come in to make sure they're processed correctly. Secondly, we see a lot of potential fraud and issues in terms of nefarious individuals seeking these refunds when they're not, or these credits when they're not eligible, or trying to dupe people into thinking that they are eligible and they're not. So that also clutters. So that's the situation. The action is that now that filing season has ended, we now expect less calls coming in as people have, most of them have filed their taxes. We can redeploy people off the phones and reset so that we're managing paper. Now, prior to this move of moving people off the phones, we were resolving about 20,000 of these employee retention credits a week, using overtime and any downtime where the phones aren't up, moving people to do it. Like every resource, it's an all-hands-on-deck situation. Post this filing season, now that we can reset the staff, I think we can maybe double per week the amount of refund of credits that we're processing. So that's the action that we're taking. And in particular, I want to make sure, and I've talked to the team about making sure that we go with the older ones first, like those that have been waiting the longest. So, really focus on if it was received in 2022 or prior, because they're still coming in. And under the law, they can come in until 2025. So this is a filing that we're going to be dealing with for years. But I think we're going to make progress. How many, but if you're saying, it's a great answer, but I also took away the fact that you're going to double per week the number of these that are dealt. How many are being, how much of the backlog is being taken care of on a weekly basis at this point? 20K.
20K. So
20K a week.
We can look at 40K a week going
That's
forward.
the hope.
Okay.
That's what I've asked the team to do.
You just said it on the record, so I'm going to be back to you. Last question. Section 127 of the code has something that has, again, been bipartisan supported for years, which basically, as you're aware, allows an employer to go ahead and send an employee back to school to get additional education, and that additional education up to $5,250 a year goes tax-free to the employee. Great retention tool, great ability to get additional skills. One of the things, and my friend John Thune and I put a bill in that got broad bipartisan support, the chairman supported as well, that said, if we do this on a going forward basis, shouldn't we also allow those employees who have student debt to go ahead and qualify as well and be able to, the employer, pay down that $5,250 a year tax-free. We had it put in place for a year. It got extended to 2025. The take-up rate, though, it seems like such a no-brainer. The take-up rate has been not great. What can we do to help further promote? And this is an area where, regardless of how we feel about student debt, you know, everybody's kind of all in, and it's, again, a great retention tool. And I know I'm over time, so I'll let you, I won't say anything else, Mr. Chairman, but I'd really appreciate an answer.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, the three priorities of our work going ahead are to improve customer service, to increase capacity to assess high-income filers, and to build the backbone of the IRS so that it's on a more stable, modernized footing. That first priority, improve customer service. In my mind, that's doing outreach. That's making sure that taxpayers are aware of the credits that they are eligible for, the benefits that they can participate in. I think there's an education gap, and then maybe a sense of what's available, and then a sense of, well, the IRS is so complicated. Even though that benefit might be there, how am I going to navigate the tax laws to get there? These are two things that we have to close the gap on. We have to make sure that people understand what they're eligible for, and then we have to make sure that they understand that we're working hard to create a much easier path for them to navigate these types of rules. In this case, a benefit to them.
The time of the gentleman's expired. Senator Hassan.